and so glad that you're here to worship with us. If you have a Bible, we're going to be back in Ecclesiastes chapter 8 and 9, part of 9 this morning. We're going to try to finish up Ecclesiastes in the next 3 weeks, so counting today. So 2 more weeks of Ecclesiastes for us. So if you have a Bible, Ecclesiastes chapter 8. And again, excuse me, I told y'all a few weeks ago I never drink water ever. An unnecessary thing, I think, in speaking. It's one of those things where you're hearing a person gulp in a mic. It's just disgusting to me, so I'll try to hopefully not even need it. But I had my wisdom teeth taken out on Thursday, all 4 of them, and I've been trying to sing this morning. It's been great, but I've also needed water as well. So if I spit blood or something, it's okay. I'm not dying, I don't think. So hopefully, sorry for that. So someone's passing out in the audience. I'm sorry. That's gross, so I shouldn't do that. But if you have a Bible, Ecclesiastes chapter 8 is where we're going to be this morning. I'm going to get myself there as well. Ecclesiastes 8. A few years ago, so back in my youth pastor days, Amanda and I, we took a group of seniors on a trip to skiing up in North Carolina. And so we had, I think, a couple van loads for this one. We took 2 separate vans on this trip. And so we were up in the mountains skiing, and on our, a fun-filled day that day. And then as evening came, it was pretty late. I think we did the twilight time. So it was kind of later at night. We're heading back to the hotel, which was about 45 minutes or so, 30 minutes away. And all of a sudden, no joke, the biggest fog, I've never experienced a fog like this ever in my life. It was so intense. And here we are, I got 13 seniors behind me. They're excited to graduate, go on with their life. And I'm just I hope we can make it to the hotel. I'm not joking when I say this fog was so intense. You basically, a van has the short little hood. It's you almost couldn't see the front of the hood of this van. it was so thick. You could not see the lines, the dashes of the line. You just couldn't see them until you were on it. And so you're on a mountain, and you're driving down from this mountain, and we're terrified. And so we're literally, I'm going 2 miles, maybe 2 miles an hour. Okay, 18-year-old dudes in a car, I've never seen them more scared in their life in front of other 18-year-old girls in my life on this trip. I'm serious. We were terrified. And so, we're slowing down, we're creeping, and it just continues to get worse because, some of you, have you ever used Waze before? Have you ever had Waze send you down a crazy path before? Yeah, well, it's probably should have stuck with Google, but I think we used Waze. And Waze all of a sudden told us to take us right turn. Again, you can barely even see the turn in the first place. You're wanting to get out of the car to just make sure you're not driving off a cliff. And so sure enough, we go down this road, and no joke, it starts to get worse. It's like this Waze, this dirt road. It's in the middle of this creepy forest. It was like a horror movie scene as we're driving with these seniors in high school. I'm a responsible adult here, terrified myself, but acting like everything's fine. But as I'm going, and it's I'm terrified. And you're this is GPS. It's telling me to go this way. Sure, it doesn't know that there's this fog that is the most intense fog that's ever happened in recorded history. But rather, what we find is I cannot tell you how terrified we were. Amanda is in the passenger side seat with me. The kids are behind me. Another van is driving as well. And it was terrible. But I titled this morning's sermon along this lines of faith in the fog of life. Because I think sometimes there's so much fog in your life that you're I don't know what to do. And in this moment, you can go to wisdom, you can use something like wisdom. You're all right, GPS is a great option. Help me get to my destination. But even in that, sometimes it can get you off track. And sometimes wisdom is really good. We're called to be wise, and not just in our own eyes. We're to have the wisdom of the Lord. Proverbs speaks specifically on this. Ecclesiastes has been talking about wisdom. But the reality is that sometimes life is feeling this ways where you can be wise, you can plan, you can prepare, but there will still be times in our lives when it feels like a thick, disorienting fog. And I believe that's what we find as we come and approach chapter 8 and chapter 9 of Ecclesiastes. And what the Kohelet is telling us, this preacher, this teacher, most likely Solomon is telling us, is he's saying, hey, wisdom helps. Wisdom is important. He's saying, I've pursued wisdom. I've gone after wisdom. I've tested it. I've used wisdom in my life, and it's great, but it can't remove the mystery. It doesn't solve everything. It doesn't clear the fog away. It doesn't make the fog leave. You just have to live within the fog, and sometimes that wisdom will only take you so far. And what we find, and this is the call of Scripture, is we live by faith. We're to be a people who live by faith even in the midst of the fogs of life. And what we find in our first section this morning is that's exactly what we see in this first section is this, is wisdom is valuable, but yet it's still limited. Wisdom is valuable but limited. Look at, as Ecclesiastes, as Kohelet is writing this, he says, who is like the wise in verse 1? Who is like the wise, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? He says, a man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed. I say, keep the king's command because of God's oath to him. Be not hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. For the word of the king is supreme. And who may say to him, what are you doing? Whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing, and the wise heart will know the proper time and the just way. For there is a time and a way for everything, although man's trouble lies heavy on him. For he does not know what it is to be, for who can tell him how it will be? No man has power to retain the spirit or power over the day of death. There is no discharge from war, nor will wickedness deliver those who are given to it. He says, all this I observed while applying my heart to all that is done under the sun, when man had power over man, even to his hurt. Here he's writing and he's telling us some things. I mean, there's wisdom, right? There's wisdom in dealing with the king even. Like here's this supreme authority, and there's wise ways of dealing that. Even he starts with verse 1, he says, notice what he describes the face of a wise person. He says, a man's wisdom makes his face shine. I feel like my face is not shining, it's just, I feel like the heartbeat in my cheeks right now. I have like the mic pulled away a little bit, it's a little swollen here. But here he's like, this man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face changed. He's saying there's value in wisdom. It's kind of the phrase we use, like work smarter, not harder, right? Like there's wisdom in being wise with how you do things. Like you can work really hard in the hardness of your face. You can work really, really hard, but not accomplish what could have been done much more quickly. I'm reminded of these hacks that you see on these various shorts and reels and things. You ever see those? It's like here's how you cut a watermelon, and you're like, wait, how did you just do that in 2 seconds? And it's just perfectly clean. Or like for me, I've been tiling or something in a bathroom, and it's taken me days, as Amanda knows sometimes, to accomplish these things. And then I watch this video, and this guy's like, boop, 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 boop. And you're like, how did he do the geometry so fast? It's like remarkable. And it's all of a sudden like, hey, if you have some skill, if you have wisdom, you can accomplish more things. It makes your face brighter. This guy's like, man, let me show you how it's really done, where I'm like struggling and sweating and I've broken 12 tiles trying to make this work in this corner. And here the idea is like, yeah, there's value in wisdom. And Kohelet is talking about wisdom, but specifically here, he talks about wisdom when dealing with authority. He says, I say, keep the king's command. This is verse 2. I say, keep the king's commands because of God's oath to him. But then he says, be not hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. He's like, hey, be wise in how you deal with the king. Like, hey, you want to take a stance on a thing with the authorities? You want to take a strong stance? Be smart here. Be wise, because you know what can happen if he chooses, because he can do whatever he pleases. He goes on to say, whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing, and the wise heart will know the proper time and the just way. I think Daniel is a perfect example of this in the Old Testament. Daniel, if you remember the story of Daniel and the Israelites, they were exiled. They were taken from their homeland and Daniel's brought to live in the king's palace. So here's Daniel living under an evil ruler, Nebuchadnezzar. But you know what it tells us that Daniel did? Daniel sought the good of Nebuchadnezzar. He lived wisely. He was like, hey, there's certain things I'm not going to do because God has told me I'm not to do these things. I'm not going to go against what God has said, but God has also allowed you to take over our nation, and you are the king that is established at this time. So I am going to seek his good. But yet also we find Daniel also calling for his repentance. He was confident enough to tell Nebuchadnezzar, hey, you need to repent of the wrongs that you have done. You see, what we see is there's a skill here, there's wisdom here, because he says this. I heard this recently, for there is a time and a way for everything, although man's troubles lies heavy on him. For he does not know what is to be, for who can tell him how it will be done? I mean, again, like there's wisdom needed in life. And as Eric Ortland, I think, rightly said, he said, wisdom might make a man's face shine, but wisdom cannot insulate you against the reaping patterns God imposes on life under the sun. So wisdom is needed. Wisdom is good to navigate life, and it will help you get through life, but it's still limited. We don't know the things of God, and what we're going to see next as we continue on through this passage, you see this. You see how God is working and how God does things outside of our understanding, and those things don't make sense. And so what does it require? It requires faith in the fog. I think of even the submission to a king and how we're using wisdom to guide. I am reminded of the story of Helmuth von Moltke. He was a German Christian lawyer during the Nazi regime, and though he opposed Hitler, he worked in Germany's intelligence agency there. But using his position, what he used his position to do was he actually used his position to help get Christians and rescuing prisoners and various ones and protecting some of the Jews. He believed it was wrong to engage in violent resistance, so he didn't go the route of violence and resisting in that way, but also he recognized the wrong of blindly obeying evil. Instead, he lived with this wise courage, navigating the tension of submitting to government authority without compromising God's law. But sadly, eventually he was arrested and he was tried for treason because of his Christian convictions and secret resistance. And at his trial, hear what he said during his trial. The Nazi judge demanded to know, he says, "From whom do you take your orders? From Adolf Hitler or from the other world?" And von Moltke answered by standing firmly and calmly for Christ, declaring that his allegiance was first and foremost to God, not to men. But the reality is, because of his stance and his obedience to God, what it led to was his execution in 1945. But he died with joy and faith, writing to his wife that even in death he had peace because he trusted Christ completely. But the reality is wisdom, yes, can guide you through challenging circumstances, dealing with authorities, and how do you respond? When do you stand up to the evils of the day? When do you live in the midst of it? How do you deal with this? How do you deal with governments that produce evil laws? How do you respond to those things? It takes wisdom. And we have to use wisdom in this way. But the reality is, as he says in verse 7, even yet the wisest don't know the future, nor can they control death. And notice what he says again in verse 7, "For he does not know what is to be." You can have all this wisdom, but the wisdom of our day is so limited. We don't know tomorrow. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. We don't know the challenges that will come. We can be prepared as we can with wisdom, but it only takes you so far. He says in verse 8, "No man has power to retain the spirit or power over the day of death. There is no discharge from war, nor will wickedness deliver those who are given to it." And he's saying, like, hey, I have observed all of this. And even here in the end of verse 9, when man had power over man to his hurt. I mean, how many evil regimes have brought injustices on people? How many injustices happen? And I think that's what we see as we continue on in this passage is wisdom helps, but it can't eliminate the mystery and injustice of life. That wisdom helps, but it doesn't eliminate the mystery. And so what we find next is we see the injustice in the world, and what it does is it tests our faith. It doesn't make sense. There's the insanity or the absurdity, the vanity of life. As we've said from the beginning of this series, that there's this word, hevel, in the Hebrew, which is the word that we get in some different translations, whether it's meaningless or vanity, or even sometimes just absurdity of life. And here what we find is sometimes there is the absurdity of life where things don't make sense. Notice what he says here in verse 10. Then I saw the wicked buried. They used to go in and out of the holy place and were praised in the city where they had done such things. He says, this is vanity. Because, notice what he says here, this verse is so striking. Because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily. I mean, how many of us have been frustrated by the evil that goes on in our day and it goes unpunished? I mean, I think of that, and we think of the world that we live in, the brokenness of life. We see, laws that are instituted to allow the murder of innocent babies in a womb, or whether we think of the regimes that allow the punishment and the punishment on Christians, or the lack of ability to worship freely in other nations. We look at the injustice of the world and we see, where a pornography industry thrives because definitely there is an audience for it. But what happens is we see this with whether it's OnlyFans and all these things that are so popular, and we almost like praise and elevate these people for making millions and millions of dollars like it's some good thing. And we go, where's the justice? When will God bring and restore righteousness and justice forever? And we look at these things and we go, why? Doesn't it happen speedily, as Kohelet is saying here? He says, the heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. I don't think it takes us long to see how our evil hearts get what they want if left unchecked. And then he goes on to lament this in verse 12. Though a sinner does evil 100 times and prolongs his life. He's like, a sinner goes on sinning and living his life, and his life just continues on. It's prolonged, like he's living this full life. But then he says here, yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God because they fear before him. But it will not be well with the wicked, neither will he prolong his days like a shadow because he does not fear before God. I mean, he's saying almost something that he has not said before. Before, he's been frustrated, like the psalmist in Psalm 73, of like, why does the wicked man prosper? Why do they continue to be prosper and blessed, and then yet the righteous die early? We look at the wicked, and the wicked are praised, and justice is delayed, and people sin more because judgment doesn't come quickly. Like they just keep on sinning 100 times over. You see, the reality is, and one commentator said, Kohelet is helping us towards the best kind of faith, which is certain about the final outcome, while soberly realistic about how long it might take for that outcome to be realized. See, I'm thankful for both. It's like I'm thankful that God delays justice. I'm thankful he delayed that upon me, that he didn't just destroy me as soon as I committed my first sin, as I come into this world as a baby. You know, I'm thankful for God's delayed justice in time, and that God knows, and he will deal with justice always properly. We know this from Scripture. But yet, in the moments when our lives aren't going the way we think, when we're in the midst of the fog and we're going like, where are you, God? Why does I continue to deal with struggle after struggle after struggle? And yet, here's this person who doesn't love you, doesn't care about you, and they continue to prosper. You go, why, God? And you're frustrated. You're in the midst of it. You don't see it. And here's what the writer of Ecclesiastes is saying, and it's back in verse 12 again. Notice what he says. He says, though a sinner does evil 100 times and prolongs his life, he's like, that may be true. That may very well be true. They continue to live in their sin and enjoy their life. But here's what he says. You see the shift is happening as we're getting towards the end of the book for Ecclesiastes. He says, yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God, because they fear before him. You see, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Wisdom comes from a proper fear of God. But the fear of God is an obedience. It's a trust. It's a confident trust in God. You fear God because you trust him. You're like, hey, I'm going to live obediently even though it doesn't make sense why sinners continue to live and prosper and why all these bad things happen to me. I'm going to trust in your plan. You see, he's fearing the Lord. Yet, what happens is, I believe, injustices in our world, it's a test of our faith. Are we going to continue to trust and fear God even though all these things don't make sense, as verse 13? But it will not be well. We know the truth, verse 13. But it will not be well with the wicked. Neither will he prolong his days like a shadow, because he does not fear before God. It's like this oxymoron almost. It's like, yes, sometimes it does happen, but he knows the truth of the end of the matter. I'm reminded even of some of the injustices that we think of in our world that don't make sense, where you're living in the fog. I think of the story of Jim Elliot. Jim Elliot and 4 other missionaries who were murdered by a tribe who had never heard the gospel in Ecuador. They were missionaries giving their life to the cause of Christ. They're like, hey, we want to go. We want to reach this people group who don't know Christ. Sure enough, they leave everything behind. Leave the American dream, leave it all behind to go follow and to share the gospel with the people group who's never heard in Ecuador. But rather, in their time there, not so long, like in just some of their attempts to land there and get to know there, they were, all the men there, Jim Elliot and the 4 of them, were murdered by this tribe that they tried to reach. And like, if we just looked at that story at first glance, just from our own eyes, in the moment, we'd be like, what? These men could have accomplished great things. They were this was like they have passion, they have a desire, they're ready to learn their language, to love these people, to teach them the Bible, to show them the way of the gospel. Like, this makes sense to us. Like, this is perfect. Like, God used these men to do great things, but rather they're murdered. And we go, what? Why? Because at first glance, we look at that and we say, like, what a senseless injustice. Young men cut down in the prime of their life. The mission seems like a failure. But as many of you probably know the story of the Elliots and the story of that people group and how the gospel was brought to them, that eventually, even through their deaths, the door eventually opened for the gospel to reach the very people who killed them. And today, there is a thriving Christian communities in these areas in Ecuador because of even this tragedy that we find. You see, there's a lot of things in the life and the fog that we do not see. And that's what we find even when we look at verse 16 and 17. And it kind of connects us still to that wisdom. Like, wisdom is limited. But look what he says in verse 16 and 17. When I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the busyness that is done on the earth, how neither day nor night do one's eyes see sleep. Like, you're busy, you live your life, you're doing your thing, you're just going through life, just day after day after day. And he says, then I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. Like, you can't understand what God is doing. But he says, however much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out. Even though a wise man claims to know, he cannot find it out. We cannot understand God's ways. We will not understand his God. There's going to be plenty of times in your life where you're not going to see the good result out of it. You're not going to understand what God is accomplishing through the trial or through the storm or through the fog of your life. And you don't understand it. Doesn't mean that he's not sovereign, and it doesn't mean that he's not good. He is still good, and he's still sovereign. Whether man can understand these things or not, I think we have to just move, maybe. It's like the lights go out, but I think you can still see me somewhat. I just cannot see you at all. There we go. Man, y'all are so still that the timer just went off. Impressive, or you're sleepy, I'm not sure. I'll keep moving. So like Colette, he's not explaining away the injustices. He doesn't tie it up with a neat bow for us, but he's calling us to faith in the fog. He's a trust when understanding fails us. Because even when we can't see justice today, we know the judge is coming. And so what are we to do with all of these injustices in our world? How do we live even while in the fog of life? I believe Colette is so straight with us. And this is what we see finally in this morning, and we're going to look at the first 10 verses of chapter 9. And here's kind of the main point of this section is because death is certain, life is precious. Because death is certain, life is precious. Look what he says, starting in verse 1 My mouth's giving way as well, so I need to speed this up too. But all this I laid to heart, examining it all, how the righteous and the wise and their deeds are in the hand of God. Whether it is love or hate, man does not know. Both are before him. It is the same for all, since the same event happens to the righteous and the wicked, to the good and the evil, to the clean and the unclean, to him who sacrifices and him who does not sacrifice. He's like, whether you live with the fear of God or not, whether you do these sacrifices, whether you're good or evil, death is the culmination. Death is the end for everyone. This is an evil, he says in verse 3, an evil in all that is done under the sun, that the same event happens to all. He says, also the hearts of the children of man are full of evil, and madness is in their hearts while they live, and after that they go to the dead. But, verse 4, but he who is joined with all the living has hope. Love this verse. For a living dog is better than a dead lion. See, in our day, we love dogs, right? I have a dog. We love dogs. But in the day, a dog was a nuisance in their day. And so it's like even a nasty old living dog is definitely better off than a dead lion. But he goes on to say, for the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing, and they have no more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Their love and their hate and their envy have already perished, and forever they have no more share in all that is done under the sun. So he's like, man, death is coming. Death is going to come on all of us. It's coming for the evil and for the righteous. It's coming for the one who fears the Lord. It's the one who has no fear for the Lord. So what are we to do? And here's his response in verse 7. Go eat your bread with joy. Drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already approved what you do. Let your garments be always white. Let not oil be lacking on your head. Think of it like those beard oils, just rub them in. It's nice. Enjoy that. Enjoy life, he says, with the wife whom you love, all the days of your vain life that he has given you under the sun, because that is your portion in life and in your toil at which you toil under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might. For there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol, to which you are going. To the place of the dead is what he means there. He's not saying everyone's going to hell, separated from God. He's referring to the place of the dead. And here's the call. He's saying, hey, death is certain, but that means life is precious. Therefore, enjoy it. We all share a common destiny, death, but life today is a gift to be enjoyed. As I was thinking of verse 4, where for a living dog is better than a dead lion, it reminded me of an old Peanuts cartoon with Charlie Brown and Snoopy. And Charlie Brown, at one point in this cartoon, he's Solomon saying, someday we will all die. It's like, great. And Snoopy, he's laying there lazily on his doghouse, simply thinks, thought box. He says, true, but on all other days, we will not. And you're like, you have all these days to live, right? Snoopy's like, live those days, and rather than focusing on the day of death. Death will come for all, but hey, death is certain, but life is precious. And that's really what Colette is trying to say. You will die, but today you are alive. And a living dog, even a small, unimpressive life, is better than the grandest lion that's already dead. Life is precious. Enjoy the gift of today. I believe that's what Paul's saying too when he says, don't be anxious about anything. You can get, so often, Paul, and even in Jesus' own words, when he's saying man, you're so worried about your problems. He's like, you're so focused on those things. What do we do with our fears? What do we do with our anxieties? What do we do with all this fog in our life and we're fearful and terrified? It's hey, but you have today to enjoy. Whatever that is, whether that's a meal. Man, I'm craving food so bad. It's I am so tired. A milkshake only goes so far, Again, y'all know, I love meat. And you're I'm not just grinding meat. It's not the same. I'm ready for that week to end of time to be able to eat again and be able to savor food again and enjoy that moment. It's like when those things are taken from you, you're reminded of what's been lost. In all seriousness, And some of us, like we can get so focused and fearful about what may happen and what could happen and what possibly will happen ahead that we miss the moments of today. Don't miss the moments. Here he's saying it. He mentions several things. He says, hey, eat your bread with joy. Like when you go to this Sunday meal today and you're all enjoying your bread, you can think of me, and I will not be enjoying bread yet, but I want you to enjoy your meal. I'm going to try my best to do that, whatever soup I have. I've enjoyed potato soup. It's been amazing. But eat your bread with joy. He's saying, man, celebrate. When you drink, here he says, drink your wine with a merry heart. And here he's not saying, for God has already approved and he approves of just anything. We know this to be not true. God has approved. What he's saying is the person who's living in fear of the Lord that he mentioned in verse 12, he's connecting that here as well. Saying, for God has already approved what you're to do. God wants you to enjoy life. He's not saying, man, and I think some of us, we grew up maybe in a place of where a lot of legalism and rules, and so holiness means you remove yourself from things and you avoid certain things. And here's this thing is this: Satan takes good things and he perverts them to make them evil things. And we take things and we pervert them to take them to a level of idolatry, where we take a good thing that is something that we can enjoy, but we turn it into something where food becomes gluttony, or because of various things. We take things too far. He's saying, no, enjoy the moment that you have. Hey, tomorrow you may not have a meal, but today you do. Enjoy that bread. And he says, let your garments be also always white. I think of it as man, if you're wearing dark outside in the middle of dead summer in July, you're that's not an enjoyable experience. You're give me a white t-shirt or something. But here it's a picture of kind of celebrations. Celebrate, have parties, enjoy life in the various ways that you do that. He says, let not oil be lacking on your head. Again, this picture here that he's giving to us of enjoyment. And then he says in verse 9, enjoy life with the wife whom you love. Spend time together, laugh together, have fun together, enjoy life. He says, even all the days of your vain life that he has given you. Notice this, it's a gift given. We've been seeing the shift from the beginning chapters of Ecclesiastes, of seeing that these good things are God's gift to you, that God has gifted you some bread to eat today. He's gifted you these things to enjoy, so enjoy them. And he says in verse 10, whatever you find your hands to do, do it with your might. So whatever work that you're given, do it with your best effort. Work hard and enjoy that gift that you have today to be able to work. Again, tomorrow has no promises, because we don't know the end. So because death is certain, life is precious. You see, life, doesn't it though, for us, doesn't it life sometimes feel like a big, thick, disorienting fog? You'll encounter moments when your wisdom isn't enough, when injustice lingers longer than you thought it should, when death feels closer than you want it to. And in those moments, Colette here is trying to help us, and he's saying, he's not asking you to figure everything out. He's calling you to faith in the fog. He's calling you to trust God in the uncertainties of life. Trust him with today. Trust him with your future. Trust him with everything. You see, you can't master life by wisdom alone. You can't predict or control every outcome, but you can trust the one who holds the mystery in his hands. You can trust him. So what do we do with that? We live wisely. Yes, we pursue wisdom. We live according to the wisdom that God teaches us through his word. We heed his call. We heed when he says, don't do this, we shouldn't do it. When he tells us to do something, we should do it. That's living wisely as he has designed life to be. But what do we do as well? We trust boldly in the midst of things that don't make sense to us. We trust him. And then what we do is we take verses 7 through 10 and we put it into practice. We enjoy God's good gifts for us today. Not because you have everything figured out, but because you know the one who does, the one who has it all under control. And so you can rest assured, even in the fog of your life, that one day faith will become sight. That thing that you don't understand, that the clearing will come. Like, I'm thankful that day we did make it by the grace of God back to that hotel. That we didn't end up off a cliff or some axe murderer come and get us in the woods or something. Like, thankful that God was gracious to us to allow us to get through to the other side. Here's our hope. Our hope is in Christ because He has risen from the dead, because He died the death that we deserved. He paid the price for our sins. He rose from the dead. We can have a faith that one day we'll get to see Him just as He is. We'll get to see Him face to face. We get to commune with Him. We get to eat with Him. We get to enjoy these gifts that He's given together with Him for all of eternity. The question this morning, again, and it's a question every week, is do you trust in this God? Have you put your trust in Him? Are you living in light of this? Or do you find yourself putting your confidence in yourself? You're like, hey, I can't see, but I'm just going to, I'm a pretty good driver. I'll figure it out. Man, trust Him. Trust Him. Look to Him for help. Call on His name. He's desperate to help you. He desires to help you. He wants to help you. So go to Him and trust Him. And one day, my hope for each and every single person in this room, that your faith, though the fog may be strong in your life right now, that one day that faith in Him, if you put your trust in Him, that one day that faith will become sight. And you'll get to enjoy these good gifts with Him for all of eternity. Let me pray as we close. Father, we thank You for Your word. We thank You for the challenge that we find in these passages. God, it's a challenge sometimes when we look at the way of the wicked, how they live prosperous lives. And then we can believe these lies that if we just pursue these things, that it doesn't matter. But God, may we have a right fear of You, as we see Ecclesiastes mentioning here in our passage. God, may we have a right understanding of You and a right fear of You in a way that we can live in the midst of the fogs of life, the challenges, the heartaches. When life isn't going the way that we thought it should go, God, help us to trust You in the midst of it. May we look to You, and God, may we enjoy the gifts that You've given, that we can enjoy these things. We can get so focused and fearful and live in fear of what tomorrow brings, but God, may we live with a confident hope so that we can enjoy even today as a gift from You. May we be a joyful people. God, I pray that as we go from this place and as we go in our neighborhoods and in our workplaces in various ways, that people would just see us as joyful because we're enjoying Your gifts given to us today. We're living with a confident hope because of Christ. And may our witness be really just exponential, God. May You use us to help people, love people, serve people, because how You have loved and served us. So God, embolden us, help us to live in light of these truths today, we ask.